I'm really excited to be here today. I did come a long way. I have some of our suppliers in this room, and I'm excited about that. I'm especially excited today about this panel because the stories that you're going to hear today are going to energize other corporates in this room to walk through the same path that they have, learn from their experiences, to create a very robust indigenous procurement space here. That's what we are here for. A little bit about CAMC. So CAMC is a not-for-profit organization. We are headquartered in Toronto. We're national in scope. And the work that we do is in diversity and inclusion in the supply chain. What that means for you is that we identify businesses that are indigenous or racialized, and we connect them to procurement opportunities with Corporate Canada and our government. Having said that, I would love to introduce our panel today. Bob Mistry is a certified public accountant with over 20 years of experience at Hydro One, working in diverse areas such as finance, operations, and shared services. As Director of Business Performance and Supply Chain for the last 2 years, Bob has overseen policy and governance, planning and reporting, and led Indigenous procurement programs. In this role, she has collaborated closely with the Indigenous Relations Department and sourcing teams to drive meaningful engagement and procurement opportunities for Indigenous businesses. During her time in operations, Bob created a damage prevention department aimed at keeping the public and workers safe while working with underground assets. Before joining Hydro One, she spent 10 years at a consulting firm implementing system solutions to drive efficiencies and achieve cost savings. A round of applause for Bob. Peter Collins, I hear, needs no introduction, but I will do this. Peter Collins is the CEO of the Chi Minnow. Please excuse me for pronouncing this. I'm going to try Ozituin. Did I do that right? Ozituin. Okay. Ozituin. Okay. LP. It is 100% First Nation-owned for-profit organization with a strategic focus on construction of the Musqueam Transmission Line project. CMO represents 7 of the 9 First Nations who have partnered with Hydro One, the networks to be 50% owners in the future Musqueam transmission line. Prior to his role as CEO of CMO, Peter was the chief of the Fort William First Nations for 10 terms after first being elected as a councillor in 1986. We have Jamie Saulnier. Jamie graduated from NAIT in Edmonton in 1994 as a journeyman welder. In 2001, he started an industrial construction company focusing on resource sector. In 2008, with the realization of a pending labor shortage, Jamie built a training program that would give Indigenous people the tools they needed to enter the workforce. What followed was the creation of Working Warriors, an Indigenous firm. The success of the initiative has landed Jamie on the pages of Globe and Mail, Winnipeg Free Press, and CBC. Jamie is currently the Superintendent of Social Responsibility at Evolution Mining and is working closely with Shared Spirits to develop procurement and employment programs for the Lac Seul and the Wabauskang First Nations. All right. So, today we're talking about 2 projects, and I will start with Hydro One. Recognizing that this is not a small feat to implement process for inclusive procurement, can you talk to me a little bit about what that process was like internally for Hydro One? And then how did you start these conversations?
Thanks, Christina. Great question. So inclusive procurement is very important to Hydro One. Electricity is the backbone of our economy, and our economy is growing. We expect demand for electricity to increase by 75% over the next 25 years. So for that growth, we need to be inclusive partners, and our partners, we need to work with our partners, with local businesses, with Indigenous businesses, to support that growth and be successful. By being good partners, we advance meaningful relationships, reconciliation, and that benefits Ontario, it benefits our Indigenous communities. And when we look at our policies and how we got there, one I will point out is our Indigenous procurement program, and our target that we've set to achieve 5% of our sourceable spend through Indigenous businesses by 2026. So we have a really solid Indigenous procurement program in place at Hydro One.
JV, would you like to talk about your organization, Evolution Mining?
Sure. So Evolution Mining is an Australian-based company. They came to Canada about 5 years ago and purchased the property from Newmont Mining. And with that, they also inherited the agreements with Lac Seul and Wabauskang First Nations. And so over the last 2 years, we've been negotiating a new collaboration agreement together with the nations, and that led to a pretty robust study on procurement, local procurement of Indigenous groups or companies here in Ontario. And so what we recognized pretty quickly was that our communities lack the capacity to really look at these projects in detail. So Wabauskang is a community of 300 or 400 people, and they just don't have the people in place to be able to take advantage of these things. And so, long story short, together with the chiefs of Lac Seul and Wabauskang, there was a concept developed called Shared Spirits, and that meant that any work that was happening in the shared territory of the two nations would be all housed in one group. So Shared Spirits started, I guess, just over a year ago now, and we've implemented the process, which is any of the work that Evolution does, any of our capital work that we do, is all sent to Shared Spirits first, and then we have supported Shared Spirits in terms of the capacity. So they have somebody that is 100% dedicated to making sure that they receive the RFPs. They're 100% dedicated to go out and creating partnerships with people that can perform the work, and as well as on the employment side of things. So it makes it a lot easier for us to have one point of contact. So all of the RFPs that flow through Shared Spirits and out to our nations, and then from there.
Now, you've talked about this process taking 2 years.
Yeah.
Why is that?
The collaboration agreement, yeah, it's an IBA, so there was quite a bit to go through. I mean, the last one was developed in 2014, and since then the mining industry has changed a lot. And there was a lot of things that we felt that the communities needed to participate more in terms of the environment, in terms of employment training, in terms of compensation, so forth and so on. So it's done now, hopefully. we expect that we're going to have a signed agreement and an announcement within the first 2 weeks in February, and it'll be for life of mine contracts. So it was very, very important that in that agreement that we ensured that we had best practices built into that, because this is what we're going to use going forward.
Okay. Peter, you're on the other side of this. So can you talk about your experience with Hydro One in developing some of these programs for developing GLP?
Thank you for the question, Christine, and thank you for your invite at the last minute. I'm always honored to come up and speak. I think for us now, I sat at the ownership side of things on the negotiation with Hydro One, really laying a foundation as to where we want to be and how we want to get there and how we can build those relationships together. Changing the mindset of industry is always a challenge. I know it's not an easy challenge, but it's a challenge. And we want to make sure that the industry understands that we need to be a part of the growth in this country. We need to remind premiers and prime ministers that we need to be a part of it. I always said that, we're not looking for a handout, we're looking for a hand up. And working in that fashion, making sure people understand, we have a lot to commit to. We have a lot of opportunities in our communities. We have a lot of land that you've been accessing for generations now. And it's time for us to see the benefit of those lands and the opportunities that go along with it. So we do have a lot of work we still have to do. I went from the ownership now to the CEO, and I've been in that role for just over 2 years. It's an exciting role for me. Our corporation is growing day in and day out and learning a lot, learning about how we deal with industry. One of the things that we learned a lot in our journey right now is understanding who we are and understanding who we're working with and making them understand that we're not here as a rent-a-feather or rent-an-Indian, whatever you want to call it. We want to be a part and we want to have ownership. We're still a small corporation, still really trying to lay a good foundation as to where we're going to be and getting there. And we had to sign joint JVs to a lot of different companies. Do I like JVs? No, I don't. But it's something I had to work with at the time. Now we're turning in a different direction where we're going to have ownership. And ownership means a lot to us, means a sustainable future for our community members and great opportunities for all of them. So our partnership with Hydro One is very imperative as it lays down a foundation to where we need to be and have an industry understand what that foundation looks like.
What I heard you say, part of what I heard you say was that you wanted to be involved, but what I think you want to say is you want to get involved at the get-go, at the beginning, before decisions are made, so that you can be part of that decision-making. Would that be accurate?
I'll be honest with you, I want to be more than involved. I want to be the owner. I want us to lead that opportunity. I want us building highways. I want us developing mines. I want us building homes and offices. And that's where I always tell people I think I'm running out of time to get that happen, but I'm getting closer and closer every day to making it happen.
Fair enough. Bob, can you talk to me about the transmission project and your partnership with GLP?
Sure. So the project that we're talking about is Waasigan. So Waasigan is a new 230 kV transmission line from Shunya to Dryden and Atikokan. When complete, it'll generate 350 megawatts of power. So that's enough to power the city of Thunder Bay twice over. We're really excited about this project because, as Peter mentioned, it is the first project that we have undertaken under the leading groundbreaking equity, 50-50 equity partnership model. And so what that means is First Nations communities can come together and take a 50% stake in the ownership. And that is really groundbreaking for Indigenous communities to be part of that. We know that partnerships are important, and that's why this model is especially important. And with 10 new transmission lines coming in at various stages of development, they will all fall under this 50-50 equity partnership model.
You're able to speak to your initial conversations with at GLP at the time. So how did that work out? What were some of the initial dialogue that were part of that?
So, as Peter said, we have to learn and listen, and we've been doing that. We've been making changes to our processes, our policies, and really listening and responding to communities and to businesses. I'll give an example that's not part of Waasigan, but within our space of Indigenous procurement, and that is, we looked at the definition of Indigenous businesses, made some updates to provide more clarity, and also we updated our declaration form that would allow Indigenous businesses to seek letters of endorsement from their, governing bodies, from their communities. So, that's another example of us listening and responding.
Thank you. Jamie, would you like to share your project, the Red Lake project, and how that's evolved?
Sure. So the Red Lake Camp's been around for 100 years. And so our tailings at this facility has reached capacity. So we have a new project that is starting this year to rebuild a new whole tailings facility that includes a lot of civil work that involves 2 or 3 new plants, a new water treatment plant, a tailings pipeline. It's quite significant. And through that process, in the RFP process, we were able to introduce shared spirits directly to our vendors. So the way that worked is as the RFPs came out in the questions periods, we had a whole presentation from Shared Spirits together on the importance of the partnership. We have a point system in place to ensure that companies that are engaging with Shared Spirits get extra points for that process. And it's worked well. I ran into 2 or 3 companies here at Thunder Bay today that have been up on site, that have bid on work, that are going to be awarded work, and they're doing that in partnership with the Shared Spirits group. So far, so good.
What would you say, having gone through the process thus far, what would you say some of the learnings have come up? What are some of the learnings that you have discovered out of this?
It's something I've been saying for years and years and years. It's the companies themselves have to take more ownership on their relationships to ensure that opportunities are not being missed. So for example, when we released an RFP, there wasn't a single group from Red Lake that could bid on this job. They went anywhere from Saskatchewan to Newfoundland. And these companies do not have established relationships in place with the First Nations in the area. So when you receive an RFP, and if it's a hurry up and rush RFP, sometimes you have 20 days to be able to respond to this. So as a company from Newfoundland, how would they go about developing a relationship with Lac Seul and Wabauskang or Treaty 3 in general to understand all of the people, all the businesses, and everything that's available for that? And so at the end of the day, a lot of fluffy letters get written in these RFPs, and communities, are left in the dark. So the number one thing that I really want to, again, address is it's the responsibility of the companies to ensure that it's their relationship. And there's huge risk involved if you do not provide the proper tools for the contractors who are building your projects to ensure that they're managing that risk appropriately, and even to take accountability on the promises that are made when a company stands here and says we're going to build a new project and we're going to do all these great things. There needs to be some accountability on those words, right?
Well said. But how about with Hydro One?
So lessons learned
Yeah.
on the project. So Hydro One is continually learning. We recognize that we have much to learn and understand from businesses and communities, and it's a continuous journey. What I'll share is, we worked with the Canadian Council of Indigenous Businesses on our journey of learning, and through CCIB, we've implemented policies and programs that reflect our learning with CCIB. CCIB recognizes on Hydro One for their best practices and having meaningful impact in communities and building that trust and relationships. So, we're pleased that CCIB does recognize Hydro One for their efforts, but we also understand that there's a lot more that we need to do, and learning will be ongoing for Hydro One.
Okay. Peter, from GLP's perspective, going into this contract with Hydro One, what have been some of your learnings? So if you had to do another contract with another company, that would be something to put in place.
Let me answer it this way. We had 2 strong-minded organizations when we started negotiating the GLP, and that's Hydro One and us as a First Nation organization. Really trying to focus on what is in the best interest of all of us. And when Hydro One says you change their path, we help change that path for them. And we want to make sure people understand that. It wasn't just about, hey, we're going to create a new path for you. No, we've helped change that path. It took us a couple of years to get there, but we got there. And I think that's the important message that everybody needs to understand. It wasn't something that Hydro One day popped up out of the blue and said, hey, this is what we're gonna go do for you. No, we spent a couple of years negotiating with Hydro One and really never forced a hand, but negotiated to a responsible place for all of us. So I'll go back to your question though, what it means to us and the GLP and the organization. We have 9 communities, 7 which is under my ownership structure, 2 that are outside of that. We represent 7 partnering communities from around the region, 6 in the Treaty 3, and 1 in Superior. And learning about the communities and understanding what our obligation is to them, and also helping them understand who we are. When we go into the communities, they've listened to corporations for generations now, coming in making promises. So one of the things we try to get a clear message on to our communities, we're 100% owned by you. We represent you. We don't represent Hydro One. We don't represent Valor. We have a contract with both Hydro One and the EPC contractor of Valor. We have a service agreement. We're obligated to live up to that service agreement, but our most important obligation is to the members of our communities and our partnering communities. So that's the focus that we do have. And you look at where we need to be, going about catching up on Jamie's message here. We want, again, we're always looking, we have to find somebody that fits what we're doing. We want to create somebody that fits what they're doing from our communities and create contractors that represent us and our communities and represent the rightful place that we belong. I've always said this for a long, long time. You know, that treaty was signed and sharing those natural resources of this country, we're starting to see those unfold now. And hopefully they get bigger and better. And I even tell EPC contractors, we're on our way, so we're gonna have to move over soon, so.
Thank you for that. Jamie, you talked about a point system, but beyond that, do you have other policies in place?
Yeah, like I said, we just went through a 2-year process of developing our ABA, and it's written directly right into our partnership agreement with both Lac Seul and Wabauskang, is how we're going to procure services through Share Spirits and then locally and regionally and so forth and so on. So it's built right into our partnership agreement, and then from that it's shared out through the various departments of the organization.
Does Hydro One have policies around Indigenous procurement in place? Is that public knowledge also?
So we certainly have an Indigenous procurement policy, and Indigenous procurement is supported by that policy. You know, when we look at the growth that's expected in Ontario, again, you know, we know that we need to work with our partners in support of that growth, and our policies, and certainly support that.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to add to the procurement policy and understanding the procurement policy Hydro One has now at 5149. But Hydro One also has to understand that some of us are brand new corporations just laying down the groundwork to where we need to get to. We still haven't created a financial path for us, but how do we get to 51% ownership without the financial capability, I guess? And that's something that we're working on, and we have to work on it to make sure that we have that ownership of 51% and beyond.
I know, Bob, we talked about procurement outside, so outside of the Indigenous procurement, we're looking at other diverse communities. What is Hydro One's take on that?
So Hydro One firmly believes in diversity. In fact, Hydro One values guide us to seek diversity as a source of strength. And when we look at our policies, we recognize that, you know, diversity brings different perspectives. It brings different ideas, creativity, and all of that drives, you know, business performance, increased business performance. So given that, you know, we embrace diversity, we are working on developing a supplier diversity program. It's very much in the initial stages, but recognizing that we need diversity to help build out our workforce. I'll share one example that we have at Hydro One, and that's our diverse apprentice hire program initiative. And that program outreach to targeted communities, provides on-the-job training. It also has specific standardized processes around the intake, and what that leads to is a pipeline of resources for Hydro One and a diverse workforce with visible minorities, women, and Indigenous peoples.
When you're talking about procurement, can you talk about how entrepreneurs are able to find opportunities with Hydro One?
Sure, great question, Christina. So businesses can reach out to Hydro One by registering through Ariba. We do have a booth here today, so please do stop by if you're interested. There's more information that's available to you. And once you've registered in Ariba, then opportunities for bids are available through Ariba. And so that's really your way into opportunities. And so that would be the first step.
How about Evolution Mining?
Sure, again, I'm just gonna keep talking about the shared spirits. It's the model that we've created. So first point of contact that we drive anybody looking for work in the region to is to Shared Spirits. And just so everybody knows, Shared Spirits is not just with Evolution. They're also working very closely with Kinross and the Great Bear Project, as well as West Red Lake. So the whole entire Red Lake mining camp is really supporting the Shared Spirits process. So that's exactly the steps that we take, is that anybody that's looking, they contact Mark Vermette. He was the CEO of Shared Spirits, and they can start discussions on what a relationship would look like. And then from that process, you receive every single RFP that comes out of Evolution or West Red Lake or the Great Bear Project that gets funneled to you. So any opportunities in Red Lake region, if you go through the Shared Spirits process, you're gonna have billions of dollars of opportunities over the next 10 years in the region through that group.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Let's talk about some of the barriers to access from Indigenous businesses to these opportunities. So Peter, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take some of that. No, I'll leave Jamie handle the rest. But some of the barriers that we're faced with right now, because on the Hydro One project itself is an EPCA project, which means all the unions are involved in trying to learn in the responsibility of not only us, but getting our people ready for that, but also understanding the legislation around the union and their operations. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been faced with some dilemmas that we've been challenged with, and we're addressing those head on with the union directly. We're also been talking to our EPC contractor to make them understand that when we've taken on this role and responsibility to make sure employment and training are at the forefront of what we do, they knew, and even all the contractors coming into our project understood that they were going to be faced with greenhorns. And what I mean by greenhorns, people have just got the training and just haven't got the opportunity to be in any role, in any type. So they're going to have to deal with that. So we've been trying to make our partners understand that. Also been trying to make the union understand that. The union is a little more forgiving. But the other thing I always talk about is our young people with disabilities. They need to be a part of that. How do we fit them in? How do we make sure that they're a part of what we're doing day in and day out? So they're not forgotten about. We talk about minorities. Well, look at them as a minority and make sure that we don't forget about them, make sure they're important as we are, and make sure they fit to everything that we're doing. So, when I look at and talk about, it seems like I'm picking on Hydro One, but that's not what I'm trying to do. But when their procurement policies were so bureaucratic over time, that was almost impossible for us as First Nation people to get involved. And the hardest part is because you need bonding. And if you're a First Nation organization that lives and works out of your community, it's very challenging to get the bonding. So it makes us, takes us out of the bigger project scheme. And we're learning how to get through that. We've been meeting with different companies on how we can funnel the bonding, so it's not a hindrance for us to continue to grow.
Jamie?
Yeah, I agree 100% wholeheartedly. On the comments around employment on projects, if it is a unionized project, it's definitely something that people need to consider in terms of project labor agreements and so forth and so on. Once a contract is signed, there's no going back. And that's what people, I think they look to those. In terms of business barriers, again, I go back to capacity. Peter mentioned bonding, finance, safety programs, statements of work, experience, all these things that are required. So in an operation like Evolution, when we're going to let an RFP go for $50 million, does the communities or the partnerships or the economic development corporations, do they have everything that's needed to be able to participate? And most times the answer is zero. So that then means how will they participate? Through partnership agreements with other companies. And so that's a critical piece to understand from an owner's perspective, that the nations often lack the capacity on so many levels to participate, and that helping them to create partnerships that are going to benefit both the company and the nations are critical pieces to it.
Thank you, Jamie. Bob, are you hearing anything different for you?
No, I think what's been said definitely resonates. When we look at our process once in terms of evaluating bids, we're looking at several criteria, like whether it's technical capabilities, competitiveness, health and safety, Indigenous participation. So many factors are considered when we look at evaluating our bids, and so all of that comes into play.
Now, we've talked about measurements and KPIs. What is Hydro One measuring as benchmarks to where you are and where you want to be?
So as I mentioned before, we have an Indigenous procurement target of 5% of our sourceable spend through Indigenous businesses by 2026. And so I'll share with you in 2023, our spend was $142 million, and that represented 5.7%. So in 2023, we'd already exceeded our 2026 target. And so that is a measure for us around our success with Indigenous procurement.
So you're looking at spend. Are you looking also then at number of Indigenous businesses or partnerships that you've created?
So we certainly track that as well. The spend in 2023 was supported through business with, I believe, 90 Indigenous businesses throughout the province.
Congratulations.
I got a quick. I have a quick question on that side of it. So you're talking about 5.7. Now you're lowering that down to 5. How do we get now? We're talking about 50% ownership on the project now. How do we get to 50% in the way of First Nation spend? And I think that should be a target for all of us. One of the things we get asked in our communities a lot. We have 50%. How do we get to 100%? And we have to take baby steps in learning our way and our path and really understanding what the industry looks like and what it means. Health and safety is an imperative part of that.
Yes.
And we're not saying we come to work, we don't care about your health and safety policies. That's not the case. The case is that we want people to go to work and we want them to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, I go back to, again, accountability. Agreements are a piece of paper, and it's the implementation plan that is most important. So I'll give a shout out to Steph there at Fire Dog. She helped us develop a bulletproof implementation plan for our project. And so there has to be accountability on both sides. So any of the companies in the room or the nations in the room have probably heard the story where they got into a partnership. They said, we're going to make X amount of dollars. At the end of the day, instead of making $1 million, there's a check for $25 because we had to spend more on fuel and this ran over and so forth and so on. So how can the communities challenge that to their partners without a process to be able to understand the project? So through our implementation plan, what we've done is we've formed environmental committees, we've formed human resources committees, we've business committees, legal committees, all the way through that process so that we're working jointly together. And then we can measure ourselves, and there's accountability on both sides of the fence of how we're gonna look at this. So through our implementation agreement, we have allocated a large amount of money for Shared Spirits to be able to hire the people that they need to ensure that they're keeping us accountable and the contractors that are working on our site accountable.
Now, all of these projects are definitely generating employment opportunities. How are people finding out about those opportunities? How are they able to apply? Do you have any insight on that?
Well, for us at Chimino-Jitwan, we have a Facebook site, we have our own a lot of information that goes on our site. We have a major following, a lot of things that we post and opportunities that we post. We have great numbers following what we're doing, what we're offering to members in the community. Yeah, there's bumps and bruises along the way, but at the same time, we're trying to do everything to help people get ahead or prop them up, give them a good opportunity in life. So, but a lot of our messages is through our communities. A lot of our messages are social media, and just the word of mouth is really getting out there of who we are and what we're doing, what we're responsible for.
Yeah, much of the same for us. We've got dedicated people within each community, like Sewell and Mobsgang, as well with Treaty 3, all the employment agencies. So when anything comes out from the company itself, we share those jobs directly with our communities and through the communication channels that we have. Contractors is a little bit of a more challenging, process because again, if they're posting their jobs on their website and they're from Newfoundland and so forth and so on, it's difficult. So we're encouraging, again, all the contractors that are working on our site to share their opportunities for employment with Shared Spirits. And then through that, it goes out through all their channels as well.
Through Shared Spirits, would you provide training, employment training?
Yes, so we do all kinds of things. Next week, we're kicking off entry-level mining program. We're doing that with the Red Lake Indian Friendship Center. And so it's a 12-week course for entry into mining, both underground and on surface. And so those are for members that want to get to work directly with Evolution. And then again, going through the process of understanding what our requirements are for safety on site, as well as what the requirements are for the contractors on site. And then we work with various organizations to ensure that that there's no barriers to employment. So if we say you need to have all these things and then you don't have them, then there's going to be missed opportunities. So what we do is we ensure that all the contractors that are coming to site make Shared Spirits and ourselves aware of the qualifications so that anybody who's interested in participating in those projects, we can do pre-training so that they're ready to go to work.
So for us at Chimino-Jitwan, that's what we do. We provide training for every opportunity, trying to look at what is the job ahead of them. Heavy equipment operators, mechanical harvesting, surveyors, the camp cooks, to ground line support people. We've done all that training. We have a lot of graduates now, but that we're also adding office administration, bus drivers, because our funds doesn't all come from Ballard. We went out and seeked other funds from different organizations, so we can add different programs on and look at what the community's needs are. If you look at a lot of the communities are short on staff on office administration, so we added that into that program. Even though it's not part of our mandate, but we did seek other funding to provide that type of training. So trying to capture all of the workforce in every opportunity. So everything that goes from the shoveling to the operators to the business people. So.
I have one last question before we open it up for questions. So, and this is for Hydro One. Talk to me about if you are giving advice to new corporates who are looking to embark on this journey, what advice would you give them?
So start by registering in Ariba. I've mentioned that before. So that is really the start of your journey.
I'm talking about if you have businesses who want to start doing the work like Hydro and start including Indigenous businesses in their procurement, what advice would you give them?
I see. So advice for businesses who are seeking opportunities, look to our EPCs, such as Ballard, on projects. Build those networks and relationships. and really just build those connections. When we look at our transmission projects under the 50-50 model, we do have a requirement that our EPCs procure goods and services from Indigenous businesses of 30% of the value of the project. So that's a substantial amount. And so really do leverage your EPCs to form those relationships and partnerships.
Jamie, I heard from you that you have to start building the network and building relationships with the Indigenous communities. Is there any other advice you'd like to give?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most important part of the whole entire process. And don't wait. If you show up to a community with a contract in your hand that says, we've been told that you're one of our communities and that we have to engage with you, that's not going to fly. And so if you're a business that operates in the Thunder Bay area, then start building those relationships right down to the grassroots in the communities, and visiting people so that you have a strong understanding of what's needed. Second of all is you have to be patient. Again, a lot of the communities that are in this space have not been down this road before. And so this isn't going in, hi, how you doing, and then signing a contract. It takes some time and you have to be very, very patient with that. So my advice to any company that's out here now is to get in your vehicle, put some gas in, go visit Peter, go visit the chief of Fort William, go visit all the different resources that are here in Thunder Bay that can support you, that are anything from education to safety training to whatever they are. To Mr. Jason right there, he's an incredible business person here in Thunder Bay, and he's a model for a lot of the nations that are here. And go visit him, go talk to him about partnerships, talk to him about opportunities that you have, and see if there's a way that you can work together on these things going forward. Just don't wait until you're told you have to.
Where did I go? So let me start this way. We have built now 27 different partnerships in our organization in a 2-year period. That being said, my message to all of them, look out, Chimeno's on its way up and you'll be on your way out. So, but that being said, there's still a lot of work and a lot of different things that really have to unfold for your corporation to really grow and prosper. And I think making sure the industry understands that we are coming and we will be a factor in the game, in the industry for a long, long time. I mean, we've been left behind for a long, long time, but now we're going to be in the front of that line for a long, long time. And understanding that, go to Jamie's comments, we have reached out to Mark Vermette already, just to get that relationship and understanding what their corporation does, and they understand what our corporation does, and let's not try to step on each other's toes. Let's build a strong relationship where people understand that we are a First Nation organization with a lot of background, a lot of history, and a lot of commitment to create a positive future for our members.
Thank you. Any last words before I turn it over to? All right. Any questions from the audience? Jason, you want to introduce yourself and then ask your question? Hello.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Jason Thompson, owner of Superior Strategies, Water Supplies, Water Power Supplies. A couple of things. I think it's important to acknowledge that diverse and Indigenous are two different conversations that need to be had. Oftentimes we lump those into that conversation. There are two distinct characteristics when it comes to equity and diversity and inclusion. We've never had wealth within our communities for the most part. So that's why when we talk about that in capacity building, it's important to acknowledge that. And the conversation around projects and inclusion when there's a project, that conversation has to stop. We operate businesses every day. The companies, the contractors, they're buying products every day. It's like me only inviting my wife out to dinner when it's convenient for me. I wouldn't be married for 28 years, I only did that, right? So that conversation has to stop. My question is this: are there additional points awarded to a submission if it's an Indigenous business partnering with an Indigenous organization. There's something to look at there. And then when it comes to accountability and capacity, are we measuring that? Because when we talk about, if you're not doing what you said you're going to do, there's going to be risks involved. What does that mean? Because I've been in this game for long enough. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of inaction. And the challenge is that there's no accountability or consequence for inaction. It's like a New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year, but I'm stopping at Tim Hortons and grabbing a donut every time. Every time I go to work in the morning. You ain't going to lose 20 pounds. Or anything you put into work in. But it's the same thing, right? Like this word around reconciliation. I'm going to quote Chief Joe Muskokamon. He said this conversation and word around reconciliation is almost a mirage. Right? We talk about reconciliation this, reconciliation that. But without those actions and without points of measure and accountability, it'll never happen. We've been through this conversation enough, each one of us that work in the business sector, where when there's a project coming down the pipes, everybody and their dog are lining up at the communities piece. Been in politics long enough to realize that when there's a project, everybody and their dog are lining up to find a partner. And oftentimes, like Jamie mentioned, right, at the end of the day, this partnership is based on profitability. Well, when the communities are not a part of the conversation, meetings, contracts, purchase orders, and at the end of the day, they're going, sorry, there's no money to disperse. You get nothing out of it. Right? That's unacceptable, right? Any community that's in your organization is looking to partner, you be the managing partner. No more on the outside looking in. No more. Those days are over, right? Our kids need it. Our kids are still, taking their lives at an alarming rate. We need to build that capacity. They need to see future and hope. I'm really, as much as I question a lot, I am definitely inspired by what the change that is happening, but we need to move faster. We need to move with more consistency, and people need to realize that if you're going around talking reconciliation and you guys spread it all over your website, then live it. You have to live it. Because if you're not going to live it, don't publish it. Don't put it out there. Don't attend events, Indigenous events, because what we've seen is that the Indigenous market is being feasted upon by people that are just looking to feed their own coffers. But it should be about building capacity. It should be about working together in mutual benefit. Big question. Thank you.
I'll try to feed into that a little bit, Jason. Thank you for the question and the comment. You look at when we listen to the Premier and the Prime Minister always talking about economic reconciliation for First Nation. Well, what's that mean to them? To me, I always said that was just a word to them to try to get us out of the way and move along. And I disagree to that. And we have to take our own step forward in how we create the economic reconciliation. And this step that we have created with Hydro One is really a step in the direction of reconciliation. The other thing that we have to look at when we're talking about opportunities that the Prime Minister or the Premier do announce, they say you must or you shall or you have to work with the First Nation. What the hell does that mean? Doesn't mean a lot to me because they're not really giving us a lot. Just like here's a brush or a broom or get out of the way. That's our consideration for First Nation. We really need to open a door, and that's where I'm trying to take our corporation, open a door, and inviting people, and not them inviting us to their event or to their company, inviting them for non-Indigenous contractors to meet with us because we are the lead, and we will be the lead. As I said before, I think I'm running out of time now.
I'll say a couple words on that as well. Jason, you talked about websites and people doing what they have to do. If you look at our pal Trump down south, who just said diversity and inclusion is all done and you're all fired and so forth and so on. You start seeing companies immediately, McDonald's, Meta, and serious companies in the United States are just pulling out and saying, we don't have to do this, so we're not going to do that. What message does that give to the communities in itself as well as here? And one other thing I'll say to that is, I'm not speaking on behalf of Evolution on this, but this has been something I've said all along, is that companies have holdback procedures on quality of work and safety and so forth and so on. So at the end of the job, you walk around with the owner of that project and you say, did we do a good job? Was the quality work done? And then at the end of that, you get your money that's held back. Why don't we do that for our First Nations? Why don't we do that so that when we have a partnership agreement in place that says that you as a company must do that. If you don't fulfill that agreement with the nations on that project, then, you know, you're at risk of not getting that money. And then further to that, it's downstream when you go to bid future projects, you're then held accountable on that as well.
So just want to add a little bit to that, because you got me thinking about my political career again. But, you know, even when we're looking at negotiating the hydro, not the hydro one, sorry, picking on you again. When we were negotiating the transportation route and the work on the highway, and you know, even when we negotiated MTO, you know what they did in order for us to maybe to satisfy us, I don't know, they give a non-Indigenous corporate company the bonus if they met a certain number. And that's not what we were asking for. We were asking for a certain percentage to have the construction work on the project. But I wish somebody had bonused me to hire some non-Indigenous organization, but nonetheless, I mean, there's still lots of work on that front, and we'll continue to work in unison with each other, in partnership with our First Nation organizations that are from around the region here. And we'll continue growing our companies, and they'll continue being a factor in the workforce, being a factor in the industry. So there's still a lot of work, but a lot of heavy lifting by companies like Jason and Shared Spirits and now Chimino.
Thank you for your comments, Jason, and I just wanted to add that Hydro One issues a sustainability report annually that highlights diversity equity initiatives. And so in terms of holding us accountable, you know, that is one way of holding us accountable.
Jason?
Yeah, I guess the bolt on, I've got two questions if there's time. The bolt on Jason's question for Hydro One on the procurement and the sustainability report. There's a plan to quadruple the Indigenous spend. And is there any part of that evolving the criteria to social impact measures and looking at, you know, some of the issues with the risk of these contractual separate JVs 5149 where they're empty to the social impact measure for Indigenous peoples? One, if there's time for Peter Collins, with the transmission project, does that open up some new generation opportunity thinking with the new procurement for 5,000 megawatts in the province with the discussions with the ISO?
I'll answer your question. I'll let her answer the Hydro One question. So, what there is, and if you look at why they're building transmission lines in the corridors across the country, is to help increase the power. And when we met with the new CEO of Hydro One, is there more opportunities in helping develop more power in the communities that we represent? So we are considering those, looking at those. I know I've been talking to Pat quite often, and Pat looks at different venues of how we can generate power for our communities. Why do they need the power? Because they want to attract the natural resources in the mining sector. And that's an important message that we have to all understand. But we want to be, again, going back to being a part of that industry. And maybe we're going to be, like I said, not maybe, we will get to a point where we will be the EPC contractors and the tower line builders. So
Thank you, everyone.